Hello there, TRASTRA fans. Greetings, Internet. Welcome all to our intellectual salon. What we have for you today is part one of our conversation with an old pal of mine. His name is Brendan Guildae. Brendan is a practicing barrister, IP and technology specialist, an expert high conflict family law litigator. But what got him on our podcast is his intimate knowledge of the intellectual property space and copyright protection. Because with an advent of NFTs and GameFi and the metaverse, the question of equitable distribution of ownership rights in the space where everything, literally everything, is imminently copyable is, in my opinion, extremely pressing. So I asked Brendan to at least try to shine some light on it. Here's part one of our extremely invigorating conversation. Stay in touch, follow us on Trustra social media so you don't miss part two, and please enjoy.
Great.
So yeah, we can begin. Thank you so much for doing this. I mean, time and the pandemic are great separators, but we're finally sitting back down after 2 years or something. It's great that we're we got connected, and that's that. Let's just leave it at that. I'm sure our viewers and listeners are just really want to know what is it that you do, because when I saw it on LinkedIn profile, it says IP lawyer. I was just wondering, in fact, I was wondering myself, what exactly does that entail? How does that work?
Yeah, so I suppose, to start with, my background is like a normal undergraduate in Ireland. You can do law. So let's say in America, you have to, law is a graduate only course. So kind of in the EU, there's not necessarily a tradition, but there's an option to study law at undergraduate level. And that has advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, if you're 18-year-old, you mightn't bring the maturity from the beginning. But over, let's say, my 4-year undergraduate degree, that kind of just exposure to a massive variety of kind of ideas of legal principles, the philosophy of law, and so on, really kind of festers somewhere in the back of your mind. So then I got the opportunity to study intellectual property law, the specialised master's programme at King's College London. And I was there around 2009 when the Digital Economy Act was going through the Houses of Parliament. And I actually knew a lord at the time who kind of gave me the inside track on where the tensions were at the very late stage of that act. So that kind of, I felt the draw to intellectual property just because maybe it sounded cool, but it sounded kind of technical in a way that I felt kind of matched with my skill set. So I'd be analytical, but I'd also have an interest in science and mathematics and let's say the e-commerce, the wonderful world we live in.
Wow.
E-commerce. So that was 2009, and really, I entered practice a couple of years later, got married, sidetracked a bit, but what I always say to people is I was never going to be, Google were never going to be knocking on my door from the get-go, on day one of my legal practice. And I don't think, any lawyer can really, unless you get into a really good law firm. And because I'm a barrister, I'm a sole trader. So because of that, I kind of had to cut my teeth as a litigator. And that kind of looked like me practicing in, criminal law, where you're cross-examining the police or the Gardaí, and you're kind of making all the mistakes you can make at that very early stage. And people say, criminal law is tricky, but, let's say criminal clients might be very forgiving in a way that maybe other companies mightn't be forgiving in the very, very early days to some mistakes. There's a couple of stories there. But I kind of graduated into my kind of other focus, which is family law. So the practice of family law, and you mentioned COVID there, that, obviously, if you have a couple that are maybe shaky anyway, and maybe they might have kids or other pressures, I think COVID certainly has kind of added an extra degree of pressure. So unfortunately, we might be seeing a little bit of a surge in separations and divorces, maybe around the world, cabin fever kind of adding to it.
Absolutely.
So I kind of maintained this background. I had to get my skills as a litigator and as a legal advisor, and there's lots of ways I did that. But back to the IP and the technology law, I think I'm at a stage now where I can provide useful insight into, let's say, what's happening now. And I'll maybe throughout this talk might refer back to the tensions in, let's say, the copyright sector when they were trying to balance the competing rights. And it's really, really interesting, in 2009, and I wish I did this, but it seemed to me very obvious then that YouTube was going places. And of course it still is. But had I invested in it, had I kind of followed my own advice in my dissertation for my master's, I think I would have done well. So I'm kind of trying to look seriously at what's happening now in terms of the markets, private sector, but also a couple of comments on how the provision of legal services has changed. And I don't want to go on too much of a rant here, Anton, but like if you went back 100, 150 years ago, let's say the language of law was deliberately opaque. So almost if you were someone and you were thinking about writing your will, you would never dream of doing that yourself because you're afraid of getting it wrong. Whereas now the law has really developed this kind of aspiration to have very clear, plain language, which is very, very helpful. And also we see something really interesting. We see kind of top tier law firms, while they're trying to compete for clients, emerging clients in the area, the law firms are now sharing knowledge online, not paywalled, just as a kind of a showing off. This is how much we know. We're down with the lingo, or we're down with the current developments. And what I think that does is obviously it makes an access to legal expertise slightly easier, let's say. So because we might be talking about crowdfunding later, if you just Google the EU crowdfunding regulation, what you will find is in the top 5 hits, you will find, the opinions on 2 or 3 kind of big law firms in your jurisdiction. So these are heavily search engine optimized articles that kind of cross-refer to the latest developments. So if you're a startup trying to maybe set up a crowdfunding platform, or if you're a company that tries to use such a platform to raise finance, you'll kind of go there, and if you're successful, you may end up engaging that law firm. So there's kind of like a mutual benefit. So I don't know where you want to go from there, but that's kind of my thinking.
I was gonna say that I noticed that about the legalities of the blockchain industry and crypto, because I think a couple of years back I was in Singapore at Money 2020, and there were actually, among all the tech providers, tech firms, all kinds of protocols and all kinds of hardware that's dedicated to that subject, there was quite a few law firms. And there were people out there actually giving out like free legal advice. And it was really, they had lines, they had all kinds of queues lined up to them. And CEOs and, tax savvy guys, they were like, well, listen, we have this question here, we have this little thing that we can't figure out. And they're actually, it's like something that you used to pay for like $300-400 an hour. Yeah. There's this, junior associates out there. It's like, well, what you have to do is you have to fill out that kind of paper. You have to, sign that sort of document and get together with those kinds of people. And then, and she words it in a way that once you've sort of filed that paper, you have to come back to me because you can't go, further along on your own. So that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. I mean,
I call that maybe modern day ambulance chasing, or the ambulance chasing equivalent of.
Absolutely. I read legal blogs all the time, and I'm astounded how much of that stuff I had to pay for like 15 years ago. 15 years ago, you had to make an appointment and then wait for for a few days before you come in. It was kind of like a doctor's appointment. But then you meet that guy and you talk to him. It's like, well, you'll have to come back. It's like you're seeing a psychiatrist. Okay, our time's up, so you have to come back the next time, and we'll pick up where we left off. But you mentioned intellectual property law, and that's something that you really, I mean, if you veered off that and veered off towards family practice, this may be the perfect time for you get back in it, because I was going to bring up NFTs and all kinds of digital rights management, something that Amazon had worked on and many other people had worked on, in the beginning of the 2000s, and they've come up with a system that's kind of crumbling right now, or is it still working? How does it work nowadays? Because we're looking at things that can be digitally signed on the one hand, and then on the other hand, they live on the blockchain. I mean, I get lost every time I start thinking about it.
Wow. Well, that's like a whole, and I think, given, let's say, even the last couple of weeks, the developments, there's a can of worms that's been opened, and I'd love to do a very specific interview on all of that.
We can totally do that.
Couple of cursory remarks. I mean, I suppose if you rewind back a little bit to what was happening towards the late noughties on YouTube, for example, you would find lots of feature-length movies on YouTube. And the problem was that when they were taken down, someone else popped up somewhere else and uploaded the same thing. And then searchability came an option. So I remember I watched the entirety of the Star Wars, I think episodes 1 to 6, totally on YouTube. And it was just, I think it was, instead of Star Wars, it was SW I had to search for, SW1, and then the reference after that. And of course that's gone. I'm always really interested in see, well, what movies are still there. I'll try and dig one or two out for the comment section. I was kind of amused. Let's say, for example, there was a movie a number of years ago called Frank, and Michael Fassbender was in it, and he wore this big head, and it was kind of an out there kind of music extravaganza, or kind of an Iliad almost of the kind of the underbelly music scene. That's still on there. So some artists are taking a view that maybe, do you know what, we made our money in the cinema run or in DVD, or some streaming, at that time, we're happy to let it go. And then maybe they'll use, let's say, the cult nature, and in Ireland anyway, that movie would have some cult status, Frank, because I think part of it was set in Ireland, or supposed to be set in Ireland. So the kind of the director wants that to happen. But if we rewind back then to the difficulty, the kind of eternal cat and mouse game between the creator and the copycat, is the copycat a commercial pirate who wants to make money off the back of the original creator? That should never be permitted. So copyright law is all about stopping that kind of commercial exploitation. But when we kind of come into the NFTs, a totally different issue arises, which is really, I don't want to be cynical, but it's more...
please do. Please be cynical, because I'm pretty cynic.
Because really I haven't looked at it, but if I create, let's say this is a blank page, if I create an NFT out of this blank page, and it's in 4 weeks' time is worth $100 million, well, what have I created exactly? Have I done anything? No, I haven't particularly done anything, and maybe it's the fame or the novelty of it. And maybe that's what people are buying and selling at the minute, the novelty. I mean, I was interested to read that, recently, that, I don't know if you remember in the early noughties, there was the paperclip to a house, this guy did this exchange. And then all of a sudden we had a girl, great, kind of redoing it and doing her own version. And I think we'd all maybe would have loved to have done something right now, certainly with property prices, again, and talking from an Irish perspective, we're called generation rent because we can't afford to buy houses in Ireland. That's another talk as well. But to kind of to bring an end to this ramble, where's the value and where is the enjoyment of the thing? I had no skill, so because this is a blank piece of paper, I did nothing to this. So this is not a work under copyright law because it's not original. I did zero to capture it or to fix it. So I think it remains to be seen what exactly the law will consider necessary to protect. And copyright law isn't a natural milieu or legal structure to protect this idea of a novelty item. So it's just the kind of, and everything else then is just a pyramid scheme.
Right. That's a great point. We need to find something for the law to protect, because as an artist myself, guilty as charged. Uh, I can tell. Well, as an intelligent person, I can tell the difference between art and a scam, and that was it's a very famous saying by Pablo Picasso. He said that art is the greatest scam on the face of earth. All you do is you grab a piece of cloth, slap some paint on it, and sell it for millions. So it's the greatest scam on the
Yeah.
face of the earth. And I can see that right now this thesis develops into a narrative that's becoming like a mainstream thing. More and more people are realizing, they're actually coming to this conclusion on their own, that it's a big scam, and they want to take part in it as much as they can for as long as they can. So this is precisely what they're doing. They're creating shitty art and putting them up on those platforms. But that's one
Yeah.
thing that's really important in my view, is
Yeah.
that right next to that shitty art, I mean real like scammy art, like pixelated pictures and something very reproducible, something copyable infinitely, eminently copyable. And you see other examples of that art that are really, really interesting. And they both on the same protocol. So
Yeah.
you have a guy who's selling NFTs for some crappy apes, and then next to it, you have a real interesting young artist who's trying to develop his talent and find a circle for him to distribute his art. But the toolbox, they both have the same, and I'm assuming that the legalities of that toolbox are all also the same, because there's no like you said it, there's no way for the law to distinguish what to protect and what to sort of dismiss, what to waive off. I mean, in criminal law, definitely, if you have enough facts, or if you don't have enough facts, then you can do it. But when it comes to art or things like something as multifaceted as intellectual property, it's probably not as simple as that, isn't it?
Well, no, I mean, there is an objective standard. Okay, so the law of copyright in the world, under the Berne Convention, kind of has a kind of a low threshold for what amounts to originality, therefore rendering something capable of protection under copyright law. But you mentioned, let's say, shitty as an adjective that could be ascribed to work. I mean, at one point, Vincent van Gogh's work might have been described like that. So we never know, and I suppose where copyright I find is good is that eventually, if 10 or 20 or 30 years time, and it's great even after the death of the author, there's plus a certain amount of protection. Where that happens, you can't have, let's say, for example, in a restaurant, let's say the restaurant has bought this NFT and it's displaying it in its main restaurant, and all of a sudden people only go to the restaurant to see that, okay? And they're maybe not necessarily paying entry, but the restaurant has kind of morphed into a museum. Then I suppose the question then is, well, there is an element of commercial exploitation of the work, even if at the time of its capture or fixation, it's not considered to be on a par with, what people might have previously considered, let's say, a noteworthy or a worthwhile piece of art.
Yeah.
So the law does have a setup to decide these issues, and I don't think we've seen it yet. I mean, a screen grab of an NFT, and that's the issue then, and then you're chasing down. It doesn't really matter that it's an NFT or not. You still have to rely on kind of copyright law, which was very much a product of the analog era, but with several kind of amendments.
Right. Exactly. I was going to say that I think it's a problem with digital era, with everything that's in it, because it's absolutely copyable. I mean, you mentioned Van Gogh. You can produce a copy of a Van Gogh, but then you'd have to make the auction aware that it's a copy, make a potential buyer aware that it's a copy. Otherwise, you're turning into a scammer, into into a thief. You're risking so much, and that's not the case with digital art. That's just not. Because if you put it up on the internet, and when you log on to the website, in fact, I was going to ask you about that. What's in all those huge texts that you have to review before you sign up to a website or a platform? But we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, so once you've signed that, you've basically released everything. Everything you think of. I mean, the property, the intellectual right, the right to the intellectual property. Once you've put it up on Binance, for example, Behance. I'm sorry, Binance. That's a whole different ballgame. Once you've put it up on the internet, that's it. You don't own it any longer. The platform that you've put it up on owns it. And I've reviewed some of the, well, I couldn't handle the entire thing, but I've reviewed some of the Apple's terms and conditions. And the thing that they want you to give up when you sign is just, it's weird that they would want you to, that they would want to have all that. Do you have an opinion on this?
Well, firstly, I mean, I'd be very surprised if that condition or term of use was enforceable. So I would say no. If you're the creator of something like a song, and you decide to share it via YouTube platform, YouTube do not own your song. They cannot sell it without giving you some money. So there might be an agreement. There might be, let's say, a right of first refusal or something like that. But no, they can't, just by uploading something from first principles, it doesn't waive your rights to ownership. And it's because, and would be the main reason, because there's a lack of consideration, there's a lack of payment. Unless they pay you to upload it, then there's no exchange. So therefore, ownership doesn't pass. And I would say that kind of has to be the position, unless it's, let's say, flagged in red. By the way, if you upload to us, we own your song, but we promise you a certain number of hits. And the website maybe is providing some kind of service to you above and beyond what is normal. But no, the vehicle, I mean, it would be like a little bit like, if you think back to radio stations, you know, just because a radio station decides to play in the 90s Madonna's latest single, that's just the vehicle. The radio station have no right over that song. It's a temporary license, and that's the structure. So I'd certainly question any of that. And if there's anyone out there, particularly recording artists who are looking at that, certainly that's an area that I'm very interested in.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, going back to NFTs, it's really fascinating to watch because once you've put that up, once you put up on the open seas or something, the platform owns it. Well, as you said, they don't really own it, as in you no longer have anything to do with that painting. Now we're going to take over from here. It's not like that, but it's they're a licensed agent that can sell it on your behalf, and they decide, not you, the owner, but they decide what percentage of the profits you get to keep and what percentage they keep for themselves, and they sort of put it up there. I mean, if you wanna post your work on OpenSea, you have to either sign it or look for another platform, and then they can do pretty much anything they want with that NFT. They can delist it anytime they feel like it. Not necessarily at the time when it turns out that it's a fake, but they can just delist it because somebody else is coming in with comparable work, and they just feel like, hey, we stand to make much more money off this artist, and this artist is a beginner, so we're going to delist him. So these are the relationships that are flourishing right now in the digital space, and I was just wondering if it's well, I know at some point it's going to get culturalized, and maybe we'll get more civilized in that term. But
no, I would say, I mean, to anyone experiencing that, that's the law of unconscionable bargain, or inequality of arms. And there's lots of protection, let's say, in the common law world against that. And the principles of equity would say no. If it's take this or nothing, and certainly when there's no consideration, if it's a free platform, because, like, let's say, Facebook, who's the product? Well, we are the product. But Facebook don't if you let's say publish a story on a Facebook or a short story as a post, you retain the ownership of that. You reserve your right to maybe delete the post and then publish it as a book.
Right.
Old fashioned. So I'd not strongly disagree, but I would say there's always, I'm startled over these years, the disparity between what might be developing in the ether as a kind of an accepted norm, as opposed to kind of, no, well, that really doesn't sound right, and a lot of my alarm bells will be going on. So again, if there are any listeners that this is striking, do reach out, because I think it's certainly open to challenge, specifically in the EU anyway.
Well, you mentioned it's actually nice. It makes a nice segue because you mentioned Facebook, and I was going to ask you about the metaverse and everything. All the latest efforts in that direction. We sort of touched on NFTs, but that's like one of the instances. But the reality of the legality of virtual reality. I was always, I don't know if you read any of the books that are like, foundational labors underneath the concept of metaverse, like Snow Crash and other books. But I'm wondering about the legalities of all these things. When you can actually buy a piece of virtual land, just thinking about it sort of makes my brain boil. And I was wondering if I could hear from you, if you have an opinion on this, because I think as a human being and a consumer and someone who's been raised in the digital age, I think it's a fascinating concept. But as a sane person, also. As a guy whose God is logic and common sense, I cannot, for the life of me, I can't figure out the value behind virtual land, because every company that's counting on putting out some ads like in Decentraland or Roblox or anywhere else, they can do the same on their own website and just pay people to visit that website. And so I'm very much interested in hearing what you have to say on that.
Oh goodness, I love, on the one hand, I want to be very careful about making a forecast, because I love, like, there's a really good, I think it's Tom Scott did a review recently of the 10 years since his last predictions on where the technology sector was going, and maybe he got probably 60 to 70% of things right, but he said, at the time, he was looking at blogs and how blogs were working, and he just missed that the blogosphere was dying, well over 10 years ago, and he just didn't see it happen. The idea that you would go to a website to see what someone was saying. So with that kind of caution in mind that we can often get it wrong, my prediction is that the metaverse is going to be a little bit like the Google glasses. I don't see the whole thing taking off. Maybe some features of it will. That might sound like I'm hedging my bets. I probably am. But like I have a 9-year-old son, and he plays on Minecraft a lot. And one of the things he might do is create a world within Minecraft, his own private server, and spend, let's say, a month making modifications within this world. Now that's his sweat. Now the software enables him to put effort into creating a world. And then the question is, well, can you own a work of art in Minecraft? That's a separate question. People are monetizing them. So I think the idea of monetizing a virtual space is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But at one point, it was, come down for your dinner, son. And he wouldn't. So eventually I had to go up, and without knowing it, I just turned the console off. And he was very upset. And as it turned out, there was, let's say, an unsaved bit of data. And it might have been, in the context of a month-long project, it might have been, let's say, the last 10 minutes of his work that, let's say, disappeared, for want of a better word. So just as a matter of interest, I followed it up with, I think it's Mojang, the Minecraft operator or owner. And the email I got back from them was, they take no responsibility for the loss of data on their space. Okay. Now, I don't think that's a tenable proposition going forwards. If people are putting time, effort and money into creating their world, there needs to be an element of enforceability if it is property that's being created. So the old cliche, the Wild West, of America, people going further and further west. And just because you're the first person to see a lake, does it mean that you now own the lake? Well, maybe not. But once the government catches up, then the government is responsible. And the government will only get involved when there's real money on the table. I don't see that happening in the next 5 years, unless we have another pandemic where people can only live via this virtual reality world. So I would be cynical, and a good friend of mine, I'm trying to think of his name, Kieran McCollum, has done an article on LinkedIn on the metaverse and how should there be meta courts to deal with issues. So what happens if two players or two members, are engaged in a dispute? It might sound very trivial, but it might. So then, will you have a dispute mechanism within the metaverse? I think there is already a provision that if you have a dispute with, let's say, Facebook or whoever owns metaverse, there is an internal dispute system, which is maybe run on very much an automated basis. It might have to become more bespoke as things unfold. So there does need to be an arbitration of disputes, and there needs to be an element of enforceability, because otherwise people won't use it, and we're back to the start.
Right, but so far I don't think there's an effective enforcement or some other mechanisms that ensure that everyone involved in the metaverse get theirs and get to keep it and somehow protect it under law, because right now it's just you sign up, you download a wallet, and you start buying up land in hopes that 5 years later, as you said, somebody's going to want that land to put up their ad or something. I don't know. It's really I get really right. It's an exciting proposition. It's interesting, and but again, like with the little mishap with your son, it's very important to keep your head in the right place when you play on the metaverse, because otherwise it's just, it's real easy to get lost there. I mean, you're not going to get lost on the tennis court, but you can lose yourself in the digital space. So that's something that I'm acutely aware of as a former gamer, but we're not going to go there, because those were the early days of Quake. I'm talking about 1993, 94 or something.
I think it's an important point just to make and to reassure your listeners that, let's say, this concept of, it's my ball. If you want to play with me and my ball, you have to adhere to my rules. And I don't know if people remember playing football on the street. The person who owned the ball, if he was upset, he would leave and go home. Yeah. And that would be the end of the game. To a large extent, the social media platforms had that freedom and totalitarianism until GDPR got teeth. Until the EU really had this focus on the individual rights and said, if you want to provide this service, you must adhere to these rules. So there's kind of like the technology gets ahead, and then once people's rights start to get affected, then it catches up. So we have the likes of Max Schrems to thank for GDPR, and maybe either Max or someone else will come up and say, no, do you know what? I want to be the champion of the users of the metaverse, and that will be a very interesting legal saga, hopefully. And again, I'd certainly love to participate in that. I was involved somewhat tangentially in the Schrems 2 litigation in Ireland. Of course, an Irish judge, Jared Hogan, did the initial safe harbour referral to the European Court of Justice, as it was then. And so if anyone's out there, the one thing I'd recommend you to read is Judge Jared Hogan's High Court decision. And it was just setting up, his opening paragraph is how he set up, let's say, the context of the legal issue that Max Schrems was trying to bring to the attention and to litigate. But just the beautiful insight he had into why it's important and why we need to get this stuff right. It was the kind of the WikiLeaks. It was on the back of the WikiLeaks issues there as well. So there is a catching up game.
Let me ask you. So we have Actually, yeah, I think it's a nice outflow from the Judge Hogan's paragraph, because I was going to ask you about big tech and the reasons why the big four are so hard to regulate these days. I mean, they've become well, too big to fail. I don't think it's my formulation, but it's well known that Facebook, Amazon, Google, these are the companies that are just beyond regulation. So, is it like is it is it the new normality that we're just going in the direction that whatever Jupiter does, the bull cannot, or is that just because of the pandemic and because the world's falling apart? How do we deal with all that? I just read an article in Financial Times about that, and I was really fascinated. Maybe you read the same article, but I don't know. It's like these guys are impossible to regulate because there's just no legal platform. There's no legal framework that allows legal professionals to either argue a case or prosecute some separate aspects of whatever Google and Amazon have to do with our everyday reality. But just litigators and lawyers and barristers just prefer to leave them alone.
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, certainly the independent referral bar in Ireland, I'm a barrister and I'm a sole trader. If you want me to look at a case, you just need to pay for me or my time, or I might even look at it on a pro bono basis if it steps on these big issues. But you reminded me of a couple of things. One was Al Capone was considered to be this untouchable, wasn't he? Until the teeny tiny issue of tax evasion kind of came and got him. So often the lawyers and the regulators can be very, very creative when it comes to, let's say, stemming someone who's seemingly kind of beyond reproach.
So that's a problem with that approach, I think. It's actually it's in the article. I'll send you a link to it if you want me to. But it's a fascinating thing because right now, if Al Capone was prosecuted today, 100 years later, and if Al Capone was Google, they'd have just paid $70 million fine and be done with it. They would have never gone to jail. They would have never, seen the side of a courtroom. They would have just paid off whatever organization was making the case against them. And this is one of the aspects of their, absolute.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I don't want to be cynical, but you've triggered a memory of, let's say, Saddam Hussein. We got Saddam Hussein, and we tried him, and there was no issue when we tried him. He was tried. And it was an element of, well, the world has now convicted you. You are going to be sentenced and hung, and that happened. So there is an element of, and maybe if you look further back, the Nuremberg trials, we had to invent or bring into the kind of the lingo of the, let's say, Western legal world, is this idea of natural justice. What is naturally correct versus what is the letter of the law. And certainly as a lawyer from a common law jurisdiction within the EU, which is kind of civil law orientated, you kind of always have to strike that balance, the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. But the recent movie, Don't Look Up, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, I think really, really gets this idea that if we allow a company to get so powerful that it can read our thoughts, well, then that's our fault. It's not that these companies aren't the companies that we need, but the companies that we deserve. So we need to kind of take a look in the mirror and say, okay, well, what needs to change? And I just think, like world history is plagued with, the Rosa Parks bus, David and Goliath. People love small against big. So we'll see. But I mean, for me, if Mark Zuckerberg was in this conversation or listening, I would say I'm a big fan because, I've had so many friends that I've connected with, stayed in touch with from school. I've been able to advertise kind of indirectly some of what I do. It's led to LinkedIn, which I think is a super platform. So I would say for me, this is where I am as a 34-year-old father of three. I can say that let's say Facebook has been a blessing to me, as has Google, So I'm not looking for trouble myself. But obviously, if someone has a problem and it's legitimate, I'm there, full square. You get me, and we can fight tooth and all. And that's what's great, because I would like to come to talk about crowdsourcing eventually, but this idea that, the lawyers or any country's lawyers have a duty to kind of collectively to the society in which they work to do an element of kind of pro bono work or public interest litigation. And I think Max Schrems, again, I think is a really good example of someone who was able to rally the troops and get, not one but two significant rulings from the highest court in Europe, twice.
Well, I'm with that totally. I'm just, I think there's something there with the analogy with Saddam Hussein and Nuremberg, because we're talking about concrete people whose crimes were very well documented, and it wasn't really other than the documents. Other than the documents of those crimes, I mean, it's just regular human logic to look at people like Saddam or Goering and realize that those people are criminals by any measure of law or justice known to men. So that's one thing. But when it comes to Google or Facebook or Amazon, even though we have a face of Jeff Bezos over Amazon, it's almost impossible to bring up a legal case against them, because Amazon, it's like a hydra. I think this would be a more accurate description of what it is, because if you chop off one head, it grows right back out, and there may be two heads or maybe four, and those heads may reside in different legalities and jurisdictions, and it just becomes a unholy mess that nobody wants to deal with. I mean, there's a lot of money in it for for the lawyers and stuff, but some, not everyone, but some.
No, but because I want to challenge on that, because I, for me as a lawyer and hopefully a reasonably good communicator, I'd really like to, say that that's not right. So no, painting all lawyers with one brush, not that we need to stop it, but like in any sport, you will have a number of competitors, and who can predict what happens in the World Cup every year? We can't. And so that's people really, really trying their best for, let's say, the good of their country. And I would say that lawyers, I think you'll find, are, let's say, just as capable as going up against what might be friends of theirs from law school, people they knew, relatives, and really, really challenging the status quo. Certainly that's the tradition in Ireland. In Ireland as a barrister, you're required to do a year of pupillage. Some people call it deviling under a master. And what that ensures is that there's an element of continuity between, those who have gone before you. So, my master will have a master and his master and so on. And there are certain things that are passed on, such as this, this independence, this ability or willingness to take the seemingly weak case. And then, there's we can share projects. So if I am involved in a case against Amazon, it could take up to 10 years, let's say, to peter it's all this way through Irish courts. I can say to a junior colleague or a colleague of mine, saying, look, I've spent 3 years on this. I am busy with other projects, but would you like to take it on? And there's always that. You will always find a lawyer in any country who wants to kind of cut their teeth or make a name for themselves. And we look at, Denzel Washington's character in Philadelphia, kind of against maybe his initial instinct not to take the case. He took the case and he fought it. Erin Brockovich is maybe another one where we had this, Julia Roberts character, saying, hold on a second, why are there medical reports in this property deal? And the whole thing unraveled from there. Great story. And then what you see,
she wasn't a lawyer though, I think. Was she?
She wasn't, no.
Yeah.
But I think and that's excellent. So it took someone connected with the law firm or someone to shape it. And certainly as the stage I'm at, I find myself shaping. You can't put words in people's mouths. You're unethical. But just saying, here's your story. I'm just going to structure it in a way that makes it kind of coherent in terms of a legal argument. So that requires a bit of, finessing, understanding the facts, understanding the law, and increasingly understanding the technology, which I think might be lost among some of the, more senior lawyers, let's say I'm talking to about those over 50
Right.
who, may or may not have grown up using the internet and so on.
Let me take you to the let me take you to the crypto house, because I continue doing crypto, and I still love the space, and I think it's a great promise to humanity. But I think we may have, gotten off on the wrong foot with, privatizing money. I don't know if we've gone the right way with stable coins and getting the state involved in this at this stage. So I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you follow the all the developments in the U.S. Congress and all the hearings on stablecoins or anything. You probably don't, because that's not exactly your purview right now, is it?
So I just my background on this is that I was kind of in-house counsel in Greg Chu's kind of super vehicle QPQ Limited. And it was a very, very challenging time because we were trying to get up and running. Greg's recent podcast really blew me away because he's bang there. And I think if anyone is out there looking at anything to do with cryptocurrency, look out for the name Greg Chu. And he'll often comment. I don't know how he does it. How he can do and sustain it over he's in excess of a decade, maybe 2 decades working on this area, but he's there in every thread speaking sense. So just on every occasion, I'd say see above, see the wonderful Mr. Chu, who's a visionary, and I would describe maybe as a kind of a Leonardo da Vinci character.
Wow.
Who is not necessarily born in the wrong time, but I think the world needs to kind of listen to what he's saying, because he's bang right on pretty much everything. And it's just about, so I am really hopeful that QPQ will get the traction. And exactly what you're saying, crypto, would we be into crypto 3.0 or 4.0 at that stage? And hopefully, like you said, the benefit to humanity would be great, But I think maybe the NFTs might be a step in the right direction because people are thinking about it. I mean, my wife asked me what's an NFT, and I was delighted to have the conversation.
It's fun to try to explain what this is to laymen. I'll give you that. I mean, it's really awesome to be able to answer those questions to people who just seen Paris Hilton on TV or something fun, when they're watching some sort of TV series or anything, or a movie, and somebody mentions NFTs in that movie, and they're like, "Hey, what is that?" And I'm like, I know. Let me answer that for you, sir or madam." So it's kind of fun.